Well, Jimmy, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for jumping on here with us. For those of
Yeah.
you guys just tuning in, we're in a series right now, just interviewing worship leaders all over the country, getting expertise in different areas, and looking to guys that I've learned from or looked to. And Jimmy's absolutely one of those guys. He runs Hey Worship Leader. Go check that out. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, kind of throughout the conversation. But Jimmy, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your story? How'd you get started in this worship leading thing?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. You actually just caught me reading. I was in the middle of
Uh,
reading this book. It's a fantastic book. I'm learning how to become a worship pastor.
who wrote that? What's
Some guy named Caleb. I
hmm,
don't know.
gotcha.
Something to do with worship leader coaching.
I really appreciate that plug. I need every plug I can get.
Yeah, that's right. It is a good book though. I have actually for the viewers. I don't know if you see on screen, but I've highlighted stuff. There was
Oh
one.
wow.
See, I actually read this thing. So go pick you
That,
up a copy.
that does make you feel good when you put something out there and you see that someone actually did do something with it. Because you're always worried, I think, and you know this as a content creator, you put something out like, is anybody going to read it? Is anybody going to look at it? Is it ever
Right.
going to matter? So,
Yeah, man. So yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, Hey Worship Leader is a channel that I started. I say a channel because I'm mainly focused on YouTube right now, like we've talked about before, and I have a website, heyworshipleader.com. But yeah, you asked how I got started in worship ministry,
yeah.
and it's actually a pretty weird story. Maybe not how other people got started in worship ministry. So it's kind of a funny story. I was supposed to just play acoustic guitar for this band that was doing a college, late high school, college age, young pros type service. And they asked me if I wanted to play acoustic guitar. And this is the first time I'd ever been in a band setting. So I was, yes, I will be on stage playing guitar with the band. Yes, that's all I've ever wanted in life. And the first, that's right, the first rehearsal, the guy who was actually the worship leader, who was also playing acoustic, was actually a very talented drummer. And I had not played with a band before, but apparently the drummer who was drumming that night was not cutting it. And the worship leader cut him right on the spot. It was a little bit uncomfortable. He's like, dude, I'm just going to say, this isn't going to work out. We got a show in 2 weeks and this isn't going to work. And kicked that guy out like right there. Yeah, so that was fun. And so basically he's like, hey, Jimmy, do you mind just getting us through rehearsal until we come up with a plan? Can you sing the songs? And I was like, yeah, I'll try. And I never left that position.
Awesome.
They never came up with another plan. I just started singing. So I could sing, which was good. And they recognized that, but I wasn't the worship leader. The drummer was the worship leader, and he just led the band from the drums and did a great job. And it transitioned from there. But that's how I got into worship ministry, which is not the calling you want to hear from God. I just saw an opening and then got thrown into it.
Right. Yeah. No road to Damascus. It was just, hey, you jump in. Yeah.
Jump in, sure.
No, that's honestly, I hear stories like that all the time from worshipers. They're like, yeah, I don't know about this big, giant calling I hear from people all the time. Somebody knew I played guitar and asked me to join. And so
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
I know from our previous conversations and your work with Hey Worship Leader that you work really hard and with a lot of worship leaders to build healthy worship ministries. Can you speak to that a little bit and just kind of like what are some differences in healthy and unhealthy worship ministries?
Yeah, so I mean that's why I started Hey Worship Leader. I believe that the health of a worship ministry can like directly affect the health of the overall church, as sad as that may be. They go together. It kind of be like a litmus test for the health of the church. And
Yeah.
but I also believe that in order to have a healthy worship ministry, there's got to be a healthy worship leader behind it. And so I do my best to focus on the worship leader because that's the first step. You don't want to get the cart before the horse. And I say it this way because um, there's no perfect formula, I don't think, for a healthy worship ministry. There's no one size fits all. We're all different people. We were made differently. We're all in different contexts, and that's okay. And so I focus on the worship leader. And so I kind of ask the question of like, okay, if you're going to have a healthy worship ministry? What does it look like to be then a healthy worship leader? And one way I see this play out of having like, well, what does an unhealthy worship ministry look like? Because I think it can be unclear, because I think we were talking before, like you can fake it till you make it. It's kind of what's below the surface. But one way I see like a church maybe heading down an unhealthy road would just be how they got the worship leader in the first place. I see a lot of churches in my area, at least, that we do a lot of church planting in my area. Church planting is a big thing. We're sending out people, and I'm in a seminary town, so we're raising up pastors all the time to go out. And sometimes, not all the time, sometimes having a worship leader is not part of the plan until like, oh, Sunday's coming and I need somebody to do music. And they get the first person they can, or they try to find somebody, or they're reaching out like, hey, I need somebody solid who can do this. And there's just not a lot of people out there. There's not like this big pool of healthy, pastorally minded, very talented worship leaders. And so I think a lot of churches get themselves into trouble by not thinking about that sooner. And so I've seen churches go down an unhealthy road there. So one of the things I would love to be able to do is keep training worship leaders so that I have a pool of worship leaders to choose from. And at the 3.5 years I've been at the church I'm at now, which is a kind of a hub for our church planning network called the Pillar Network, we've been able to send out several worship leaders. I actually just said goodbye to another worship leader last week who's moving to Greenville. And so I had a season where I was full, and you could definitely see God working in this because I had a transplant last year and I was able to be out 12 weeks and not miss a beat. I had different worship leaders be able to step in and all that. And so now I am down to myself, and God just sent another guy who can fill in for me, and he's very talented. And so anyways, that's my focus, pouring into worship leaders. And I think the outcome of that is then healthy worship ministries. And I will say that we all need growth. It's kind of hard to see, oh, that's an unhealthy or that's a healthy worship leader. I think every ministry has to look and say, what are the unhealthy parts in my ministry? What are the unhealthy parts in me? And then work to grow in those areas. And so the difference between healthy and unhealthy was kind of like the story we just mentioned. Like, I got thrown into it. I was an unhealthy worship leader at the beginning because honestly, I picked up the guitar to make friends, female friends. I was 18 years old and I just saw other friends who play guitar, and I was like, man, I want people to like me. I want to be able to be seen, the fallen human condition. I was 18 years old, 17, 18 years old. That's what I wanted. And so I got thrown into a leadership position. I was on stage and I loved it. And I knew nothing of leading people. I didn't understand of what the role of a worship leader was. And I was just copying what I saw out there. And I wanted to have big lights, big stage, loud music. And I think that is a sign that, that was unhealthy. And so luckily God used all that to shape me, to guide me, put me around other leaders and ministry opportunities that grew my understanding of worship ministry and the role of a worship leader. And I'm still working on that today.
Yeah. So if there's like someone listening to this or watching this who's okay, I started the same way you did, where I was just asked to jump in and do this. How can I make sure that I become healthy or stay healthy? What would you tell them? What's kind of some steps they might be able to take? I know you said it's not one size fits all, but where are some kind of starting points?
Yeah. So it's not one size fits all. And it's also not clear like, oh, I'm in an unhealthy worship ministry. Yes, you probably are, because people are unhealthy. And so, to some extent, the worship ministry I'm in may be unhealthy, and I need to identify that and work on it. But I feel the best way to start the journey toward being a healthy worship leader, to have a healthy worship ministry, is to find someone who is ahead of the curve from you and soak in everything you can from that person. So whether it be a friend or a mentor or whatever it is, find that person who is more experienced than you, who knows more than you, and just absorb and learn from them. The problem in my experience is that those people are often hard to find. So I've learned from what I could from people that God put in my life, both good and bad. Sometimes I had bad leadership in my life, and I learned what not to do, or at least what I didn't want to become. And I learned, I need to steer in another direction. And so, yeah, I would say find someone and soak in everything you can. And if you can't, there are practical ways that to stay healthy as a worship leader. And so in my mind, I think it's a mindset. It's knowing that you can't do it all. It's being faithful, available, teachable, that the FAT acronym, faithful, available, teachable. It's shepherding the flock, learning to be a shepherd by being an example, First Peter. Another way I think about it, of being healthy, because healthy is so generic, I also think about being well-rounded. Like I said, we might have areas in our life that are unhealthy, and other areas are healthy. So it's being well-rounded, and not well-rounded just in the talent or skill base, which is where my mind kind of goes when I think well-rounded. But there are other areas. So when I talk to people, or when I'm training worship leaders, there's like 5 areas, big, broad areas that I'm like, you need to pay attention to these. And I try to hold them accountable, or at least make them aware that these are the areas you need to be thinking about. You need to know your role as a worship leader is to shepherd your people, to pastor your people, your congregation. Then you're supposed to lead your team well, and that's like resourcing them and then reproducing them and yourself. Performing with excellence, and I could talk about that. We don't like the word perform, but if you don't perform well, you're going to hear about it. And then gearing up for the weekend, you got to know about gear and all that, but then also taking care of your own soul. Mm-hmm. You can't pour yourself out in ministry without filling up. So these are broad categories that pretty much hold everything we do as worship leaders. So if we can know those areas, I didn't know those areas coming into it. I didn't know anything about leading and shepherding and even taking care of my own soul. And so I think those are practical ways. And I think that's the importance of a mentor or coach.
Yeah.
Because unless you have that person at your church pouring into you, which people in my church have me, but honestly, I had to go seek someone for myself, because I am 36. I'll be 37 in December. So finding worship leaders who are maybe 45, 46, 47, who are experienced, I don't know many of them. And if the ones I do know aren't with me. And so I've had to seek out some people, and God has sent mentors to me, and people who pray for me and keep me accountable and motivate me, pray for me specifically and support me. And I think that is the work of a mentor or a coach. And I know you do worship leader coaching, and I'm doing that as well. And so there's so much value in the work of ministry. And when you don't invest in these important areas, then burnout, or worse, could be right around the corner. And so, I think that's the way to go. That's why I value mentorship, investing in people that will invest in you on a real practical level.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I answered like 4 questions in that one.
Yeah.
But
No, that's great. I send these questions beforehand if you're watching, so he knows where to go with all this stuff. It's easier, so I don't have to talk as much. I actually want to shift gears a little bit. I want to go back. You mentioned the word performance. I know we've talked in the past how something that you're pretty big on is redeeming that word of performance and excellence, and really doing things well, leading worship well and at a high level. And can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think there's a lot of worship leaders listening to this who either 1 are going, no, it's not a performance, or 2 are going, yes, I've been trying to say that, I just don't have the words for it for my worship team.
Yeah, so I think the way I've been able to mull around in my head, just trying to figure it out too, is we use the word perform in different ways. Also, you have a stage actor who is performing, they're acting, they're putting on a show. And when people say worship isn't a performance, that's what they're referring to. And I would say, yes, it's not a show. But I want worship leaders, I want myself to perform with excellence, like I want my surgeon who did my kidney transplant to perform with excellence. I want them to show up, be prepared, know exactly what they're going to do, and be able to communicate that and lead me in the process. So that's how I want to redeem the word performance. And when I talk about excellence, because that you can push that too far too. We don't mean perfection. We just mean excellence. And what I view is being in the king's court as a servant. And, I think the Sunday morning is kind of like being there for the king's birthday. The whole day is about the king, and everything else is to point to the king. It's his birthday. We're celebrating him. And the servants aren't over there just doing their own thing. They're prepping the cake or what. I don't know. Your imagination can run wild, but everything they do has purpose, and they're doing it the best they know how, with full intention and planning and care, because it is for the king. And that is how we as worship leaders should approach everything we do, from memorizing chords and our lyrics and singing and pointing into people and practicing and rehearsing, which are two different things.
Preach that.
Come on. That's how we should redeem that word perform. Like you do need to perform. And I made a joke earlier about, if you don't perform well, you're going to hear about it. People don't want performance in church, but man, if you sound bad or you play bad notes, it's distracting. And the Karens, which my mom's name is Karen, that's so funny, but if you follow any social media, it's always Karen who's coming up to you after the service. So the Karens are going to let you know if you didn't perform well. So anyways, if we can redeem that word and really understand it and be able to communicate that to our teams, what we mean by performing well and pursuing it with excellence, like for the king, then it kind of changes our mindset of how I go prepare for that. And it motivates me. So I think it's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked about some similar things before with, talking about like Psalm 78, David loved a skill of hand and integrity of heart. Like it was both, man. You're a worshiper. Your heart has to be in it. But if you're going to lead people, you need to be skilled in that. Like you need to know what you're doing.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, man, as someone who spends a lot of time, obviously, developing worship leaders, leading worship, pastoring your church, how do you continue to develop yourself as a worshiper? I know you mentioned some mentors earlier. Do you do anything else?
Yeah, I would say it hasn't been perfect. You would coach somebody to do the things that you've learned not to do, but I've struggled to find people that people to pour into me. But lately, God has sent people. There's a man that's come into my life recently who's old, he's as old as my dad, but ministry minded, and prays for me, keeps me accountable, and man, he's been valuable to me, doing different cohorts with other ministry leaders, make sure we're sharpening. I've done a lot to try to build unity and relationships with other worship leaders in our area, inside our network and outside, just because it just feels comfortable. It makes me feel more comfortable as a worship leader to know that we're not competing with another church. Like we have this bond, like we're all struggling with the same things. We all have, if we're worship leaders, we all have band members that rub us the wrong way, and we all have the Karens to deal with, and whatever the struggles are. It's I've been doing, like, especially before COVID hit, I was doing worship workshops where we get together with other worship leaders. Some of them would just be very practical, like, hey, how to play bass, bring your bass players. But some of them were worship leaders getting together, learning how to stay organized and stay sharp with your team and know how to resource them well, or to know how to shepherd your congregation. We say that, but do we know how to do that? And so trying to remember what the question was. Oh, how do I develop myself? Yeah, I just surround myself with other worship leaders. I found God sent a mentor in my life. And that's how I do it. I've also invested in some online stuff because I couldn't find it in my area, which helped me specifically with worship ministry. And I just keep pouring in, looking for ways to grow. I think, like I said, it's a mindset thing, is that, I know a lot more now at 36 than I did at 26, but hopefully I know a lot more, and I'm better at my craft at 46 than I am today. And so learning to keep growing and not remain stagnant. I always think of one more thing. I always think of the guy, because we're talking about bands and stuff. There's always he's always an electric guitar player who grew up and then got stuck in the decade that was his favorite. And I've seen that throughout the years, different churches, and love those guys. There's nothing wrong with that. But I was like, man, I don't want that to be me. Now, as I get older, in high school, I listened to like 90s alternative rock, and man, there's a Spotify playlist, and I'm like, dude, this is everything I listen to, and I can jam to that, but I want to enjoy it, but I don't want to be stuck there. I don't want my dress and everything to be, it just has stopped. And what I really mean by that is my learning. Like I want to keep learning and progressing and be able to sharpen my skills as a worship leader.
Yeah. You mentioned um, surrounding yourself with other worship leaders is kind of a big way to do that. What's for the the guy watching who's watching in his church office right now and going, I don't know any other worship leaders. I don't know any other churches in my town. What would you say to him? How can he reach out to somebody? What's the best move to make?
Yeah, that's tough, because I definitely know people like that have found me, or I've met them, and we've been able to connect. So I would say connect with me or Caleb. That's a good start, and we can at least start some bond there. But reach out to people in your church. Like, you have to be intentional about it. And I've done better at this than other times in my past, where I get busy. I'm a person who is focused on what's right in front of me. It's hard to think outside the box or think about something else. And so I've had friends, and then it's like, man, out of sight, out of mind, which that kind of goes back to the coaching and mentor, because that's what they do. They help you stay focused and help you think about all those things. That's what's very needed in my life. So I would say to them, find a mentor or a coach that can help them through that. Be very intentional with going to find, even if it's outside of your denomination or whatever, go find other people that you can connect with, because it doesn't happen naturally. People are cliquish. They like to be inside. And so, yeah, just be that person that you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah. Well, talk about mentor coaching a little bit. That's what you do. That's kind of your thing as, hey, worship leader, is mentor coaching, really coming alongside somebody and living life and, leading worship together, even virtually, just, walking together as worship leaders. Talk about what that looks like. If someone here is hearing that and going, man, I need that, how can they reach out to you? And I've got a couple more questions still, but I figure, let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think my heart behind the mentor coaching that I do through Hey Worship Leader is kind of what I was saying. I wanted to become what I couldn't find, because if I had that need, I know other people have that need. And I think the benefit is stuff we've already talked about. Is here's the other thing, is you can go online and learn anything you want to learn. And there's a lot of good resources out there to learn how to do certain things, and you can find stuff on YouTube. But the thing that I find that's the hardest is to have someone who is in your corner praying for you specifically. So what I do through mentor coaching is commit for a season, however long they want, to hold them accountable to their goals, figure out what their goals are, keep them motivated, because man, in ministry, it's so hard to stay motivated sometimes. We were just talking about that. I won't go into that right now, but and then offering that real-time support and prayer for them. So the acronym actually is like AMPS, AMPS: accountability, motivation, prayer, and support. Guitar amp. I'm a guitar player, but man, I think that for me, that's what's so valuable about that. That's what I want from somebody, is not just to sign up for an online thing that I can do at my own pace, which that's cool, and I hope to make something like that in the future, but someone who will actually like, hey, Jimmy, you were working on this last month. How is that going? Are you staying motivated? Sending that text or email once a week, just checking in and keep pushing and actually care for that person, especially for the person who, like you mentioned, who might be sitting there thinking, I feel all alone in ministry and I don't know what to do next. I'm stuck. And so that's what it's for. It's for that person to not feel alone, because I think that's one of the areas that Satan wants to attack, especially any ministry leader is, or any person really, is to isolate them.
Yeah.
When you feel isolated, you feel weak. And so just building that real connection. We have all these virtual connections, but even though it's through a screen, but that real personal connection, helping them with their goals and everything, like I said, I think is the heart behind the mentor coaching that I do.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely check that out if that's where you find yourself saying, I need somebody to walk with me, to keep me accountable, to pray for me, to amplify what I'm doing. And see, yeah, you're welcome. Uh,
Write that
uh,
down.
yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, reach out, heyworshipleader.com. That's right. Right.
heyworshipleader.com, and you can find it from there. It says mentor coaching or coaching at the top of the website. You can check it out.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, yeah, just a couple more things I'd like to hear from you on, just because I know that, these are questions that I get all the time. So I figure it's going to be good to hear from other worshipers as well. What's the best piece of advice, the biggest piece of advice you'd say you would give to a brand new worshiper? Let's say someone, less than a year, maybe they just started leading, last month. I don't know, like they're brand new to it. You're saying, all right, I'm stepping in this role. I was, asked to step on stage. I didn't want this, or maybe I did. I don't know. What's the best piece of advice you have for them?
Yeah, I would just say, just go home, give up now. No, I'm just kidding. Honestly, what I wish I had done, so this is the advice I wish Jimmy long ago would have heard, is to, and these are in order, love God first, love people, and then sharpen your craft.
Yeah.
Like hone your craft, however you want to say it. And so love God, obviously. We're in ministry. We're believers. You need to love God. I need to say it because often we forget that. We get so busy doing other things that we forget to enjoy God, to love him. But then loving people, putting people first, not in an unhealthy way, I want to say, not in a people-pleasing way, but just the opposite, like love them and build those relationships. For me, I feel like, pouring into people. So something I do at church, and I'm sure many worship leaders do too, but some don't, and I've seen this before, is before the Sunday morning worship service, going out and talking to people in the congregation between services, just making your face known, smile, shake hands, or fist bump, or whatever, Corona style. But just making that personal connection. And so I've been in youth ministry at different times in my life. And I remember when I was a youth, when the band made a connection with me, like the worship leader, man, that went a long way. The speaker, anybody who's on stage, you never know. You see people on stage and you put them on a pedestal because they're up there already. But when they make a connection, I remember I went to Elevation Church one time and I saw Mac Brock in the bathroom, and he actually was cool and said hey to me. And I just remember I was like, he's on TV or whatever, but he said hi, and that made an impact on me. That was like way back 2011 or something. But and so I thought, man, I want to be that person.
Brock into a bathroom is what I just heard.
What'd you say?
You cornered Mac Brock in a bathroom to talk to him. That's what I just heard.
I definitely did not do that. I did get his autograph. No, I'm just kidding. No, but so I wanted to be that person who people trust, and I think trust is a big thing. So when I say love people, love God, love people, sharpen your craft, the love people is the ministry of building trust so that you can have actual impact. Yeah. I think of, even if it's a short youth thing. So right before the quarantine hit in February, I was able to go to a D Now, and it was like 3 churches came together, and we had a blast. And so the band, we could have just between sets just did our own thing, had some free time, whatever. We decided to go play 9-ball with these kids and just had fun. And we built relationships with them. And it was only, 2.5 days, but it just made the worship service in particular so much more authentic, because I felt like, oh, I know these people, they know me, and they're not looking at me anymore wondering who's that person on stage. They know my heart because we've already had conversations. And now I can do my job as a worship leader and say, we're not here for me. We're not here for you. We're here to worship Jesus. And it just made the whole weekend that much more authentic. And so that's the same mentality that I try to put in every Sunday. That's the piece of advice. I got gear on my mind. That's the best piece of advice I would give someone. Love God, love people. And then, as we've already talked, sharpen your craft, get with a mentor, learn your instrument, sharpen your craft, do those 3 things, and that will get you on the way to being a healthy worship leader.
That's awesome. Love that. Well, what is, kind of wrapping it up here, what's kind of the biggest lesson you've learned in the last year, whether ministry focused, worship leading, just in life? It's been a crazy 7 months or so, 5, 6, 7 months, and 2020 has been weird. So, what what have you learned in this season? What are you taking away from this season that you can go, you know what? It was weird, but it wasn't a waste. What are you taking away?
Yeah, I think it's a continued lesson that I learned last year. It's I'm still learning it, and it's not like I'm learning it for the first time. I'm just learning it deeper and on deeper levels. Is that my identity is not in being a worship leader. So I have a worship leader. My full-time job title is a worship leader at a church, but I mentioned I had surgery last year. I had a kidney transplant, and I was out for 12 weeks. And even when I came back, I had not only the transplant, but then 2 follow-up surgeries just because I don't know. It just, and every time I had a surgery, it was like 3 months before I was able to pick up more than 5 pounds. So there goes my guitar, my pedal board, all that stuff. And so I was like, I got to thinking, and God taught me a lesson as I was recovering, that I can't pick up anything right now. What if during one of the surgeries, as they're putting that stuff down your throat, I lost my voice and I wasn't able to do anything? My mind went there, but not in a bad way. I was just thinking, like, what if I did lose the ability to do the things I do? Would I lose my value or my identity? And, we have to struggle with that as worship leaders. Like, when things don't go well, we tend to put that on ourselves or blame other people. Our identity is wrapped up in being a worship leader. How good did we perform, and how good did we do? Because we are so scrutinized, it kind of, it's one of those things that's very difficult to balance. And so I'm learning that, man, my identity is not in that. I'm a servant to the King. He's going back to that thing. I'm a servant of the King. I'm going to do whatever I can, the best of my ability, love his people, sharpen my craft. And if that's no longer worship leading, it's going to be something else that I can do. And so I think the best worship leaders, I say the best, if the sooner a worship leader could get to that level of understanding, the better it would be. Like, man, if I could never pick up a guitar again, and I could never sing again, my voice is gone, I'm still valuable to the kingdom, to Christ, to the church. And that's the lesson I'm continuing to learn through COVID, is that, man, we haven't been able to be in front of our people. Now we're in our church, we're meeting outside in a big field, and I'm staying away from everybody. I just mentioned how I love going and talking to people, and right now I don't. I am immunocompromised, so I can't be close to people. And so I literally show up for rehearsal. I go sit back in my car. I come out for play the music, stay away from people. And as soon as it's over, I'm out of there, because I physically just can't be around people. And that tears me up, because I want to do what I just talked about, which is like invest in people. So I try to still do that as much as I can with phone calls and emailing and texting, but that personal interaction is something that's been really difficult. But I'm learning that my identity, to do my duty as a worship leader, is not tied up in those things that I control. I just need to do the best with what I can, with what God's given me. And that may be, as we're learning in COVID right now, time in front of people, being able to make those connections, even though this stuff's limited, just doing the best I can do with what I've been given.
Yeah, so good, man. So we got to wrap it up. As we do, tell us one more time where we can find you, and anything else that you're doing that we should know about.
Yeah, so just that's it. I'm trying to grow the YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com/heyworshipleader, or just go to heyworshipleader.com. All the stuff's on there. You can click the social. I'm also on Instagram @heyworshipleader. All those places you can find me. And I try to respond to people as much as possible. You can direct message me on whatever app. I'm also on Facebook. Not a lot of people on Facebook, or at least on the page, but sorry, I'm coughing. But I'm also on Facebook. So if people want to get in touch with me, they definitely can reach out. I'd love to start a conversation for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man.